Welcome back to the Human Side of Emergency Management podcast. My name is Vivian Thompson. There has been a slight delay in the last podcast being loaded because, as you can hear, my voice is slightly damaged at the moment from the flu. Sadly, in Australia, we've got a very tough flu season going around at the moment, leading into winter. But I'm very pleased to say today I'm speaking with Mike DeGrosky. Welcome, Mike. Mike is a respected leader, a thinker, an educator in the wildfire and emergency management world. Mike has spent decades shaping leadership, culture, and human performance in high-risk environments. His work has influenced leaders across North America and beyond, and I'm honoured to have him here to talk about the human side of this work. His work is widely cited across North America and internationally, especially in wildfire, incident management, and organisational leadership. Thank you. Mike, I just wanted to start with a question which sort of goes back to your experience and your time where you were lecturing about leadership for the Department of Leadership Studies at Fort Hayes State University. You were doing that for quite a few years. When I was reading through some of your articles and some of the stuff that you produced, it sort of hit me. It's one of those questions that people quite often ponder. And it doesn't matter whether that leadership's in a health space, within an educational space, or even in the emergency management space. And I quite often get asked this a lot as well. Can you actually teach leadership or not?
Yeah, I believe very strongly that you can. And the reason I say that is leadership is a process. It's about relationships. It's about influence. And those are all things that you can help people get better at. And so while, teaching leadership, yeah, you can also teach the fundamental nature of leadership and how we understand it today based on a lot of research that has been done. And you can teach people what our current understanding is of what leadership is and how it works. But then we can also help people become better at key tasks and skills like listening and emotional intelligence and conflict resolution. And those are all things we can teach people to do. So when you teach people to do those things better, you are teaching them to become better leaders.
Yeah, it's such an interesting question. I know quite a few years ago, gosh, probably going back 15 years now, I did a graduate certificate in rural leadership, and it's an experiential learning program that we did, and you're immersed in it for, I think it goes roughly 18 months. So every 3 months you get together for a week or two, and we spend a lot of time together going through those leadership skills and learning and developing. It was really about learning more about yourself. And it was a course which is really highly regarded in Australia, the Australian Rural Leadership program. And there's only like about 35 people a year that get on it. And I was very blessed. But I found the one question after graduating from that program, people asked you, what did you get out of it, Vivian? What did you get out of it? It took me so long to articulate because 18 months of being immersed in that emotional journey. And it took me, I reckon, a good 12 months to work out what it was. And at the end, the only thing I could come up with was that I learned that it was not about me. It's the only way I could describe everything that I'd been through was that you use your experiences, you use your learnings, you use things that you did right, things that you did wrong, the things that you learned. It's a whole gamut. And as you're saying about the emotional intelligence, learning how to communicate better, you know, really valuing that diversity and all that sort of stuff was at the end of the day, it was all of that I got that I could then give back.
Yeah. 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 It is, you touched on a really important thing there. The people cannot be very effective at leading other human beings, at influencing other human beings without knowing themselves and so for me that's so fundamental to leadership development, is just helping people understand themselves, understand their values, understand what their we research is pretty clear on skills that contribute to leadership. So people need to evaluate where their strengths lie, where their weaknesses lie. And I just think that is so fundamental to people's leadership journey.
Yeah, it's so true. And It's interesting because whenever you sort of get into I don't know, like a sticky situation, part of that reflection on yourself is part of the answer and how to resolve it.
Right. And I largely, I came to in my own journey, if you will, came to largely the same conclusions you did. Quite often where you see leaders go wrong is they're serving their needs and they're not serving the needs of the people that they're trying to influence. And the world doesn't work that way. People don't do things because they want to serve you. They do things because it's meeting because you are meeting their needs. And that's really, really an important jump for people who are learning about leadership to make.
Many years ago, I got taught, public speaking because we all have to have that skill and we all dread it, but we also recognize that we have to get good at it to get our message across, even if it's at a briefing or a debriefing. You've got to have these skills to talk publicly, openly, and confidently with.
Yeah, I had a former colleague, and I don't think he came up with this piece of wisdom himself. I don't know where he got it from, but he introduced me to a little bit of a mantra that is, people don't care what you know until they know that you care.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one before. That's really precious. That's really
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
I
I
might
thought it was
steal
really.
that one too. Sorry.
No,
I just want to ask you, I just got a couple of really interesting questions. And in terms of your leadership, because I know that you've done so much over the years, worked in the industry, worked as a consultant, forestry, the natural environment, your experience lies across so many different areas that has just given you such a great foundation to work from. But as we're sort of discussing, it still comes back to the individual in some respects with the leadership. So when you look back over your career, what moments do you think shaped you the most as a leader?
So this might be a little bit of an unusual answer to your question because some of those moments and really important ones actually occurred at a pretty young age before I actually had a career. And the first one was the first time a person, and it was my first real mentor, recognized leadership potential in me, saw leadership potential in me, encouraged me, helped me develop that potential, and put me in a position of leading. I had never seen myself that way up to that point and had never thought of myself that way. So it was what a former colleague, no longer with us, Paul Chamberlain, called a portal experience, one of those experiences that you pass through, that when you come out the other side, you are changed. You are a fundamentally different person. He was a big thinker. And the next one was the first time that a person saw in me the ability to mentor another person and suggested to me that I mentor another person, and that person accepted me as a mentor. That was also a very important. Next was being a hotshot squad leader. I mean, it's an experience that I had. I don't even know. I hate to think about how long it was now, but 40 years ago. But it is still a thing, regardless of what else I have done in life, that I regard as a foundational experience for me. And then the final one is kind of a twofer. The first one was deciding to go back to school in my 40s to study leadership formally. And that led to a discussion with my master's advisor who said, you belong in higher education. You should go on and get a PhD. And those two decisions, to go back to school and then to go on and get a PhD, the knowledge that I gained on that 11-year journey has completely shaped me as a leader and as an educator of leaders.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. It's you quite often hear people referring to you hear that term all the time, lean in. If it challenges you, lean in. I sort of see it sort of slightly different, is that if you're uncomfortable, it means that there's something that you're not comfortable with, especially in a leadership space. And so it's like you've got to unpack that. Why is it you feel uncomfortable? Why is it you're feeling this way? And I know when I look back over my career, there have been times where I've been on a fire ground. You get through the other end of the fire, you sit back and you reflect. But you're thinking about operations. You're thinking about, should we put that dozer line there? Should we brought the crew in earlier? Should we backburned off a different point? Whatever. But I used to sit there and think, did the crews understand what I was saying?
Yeah.
You know, did I get through to them how important this safety aspect was? And I'd sit there and just constantly go over and over in my head. And I think when you look back, it was one of those moments that shaped my career in terms of turning me around, in terms of my leadership, especially on the fire ground in those high stake moments. Because I think the one thing with the leadership that we have is it's always done under pressure. It's always done in high stake, high stress environments, and it just puts that totally different slant on it. And I know when I went through some really catastrophic fires here in Canberra in 2003, 3-4 years out from that, my leadership, what it was before that, and my leadership after that was very different. And I'd really like to talk to you about this, because part of that reflection that I had to take a step back, because I realized that I had to slow my leadership down. Because when you're in operations, it's bang, 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 bang. You know what you're doing. You know where you got to go. You know where you want to be. It's inherently trained and it's in you, but you've got a whole team supporting you to get there as well. But when it comes back to that self-reflection in those moments as an individual, it's quite different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's such an important skill and approach for leaders to be introspective. We're always talking about, high reliability organizing and high reliability organizations, and you can apply the same principles that make organizations high reliability to yourself. And it's very important to, as you say, gather all the information you can and use that information to just continuously improve your approach to leadership. Leadership is a craft. I mean, in some ways it's a science, in some ways it's an art, but I look at it as a craft. And crafts people are constantly working at honing their craft. And I just really encourage people in leadership roles, to think about their leadership very seriously. Not as I have this position, but I have this responsibility. I have this responsibility to people, and I need to be as good at it as I can be. It's not about the fire. Most of the people I know in fire, the fire stuff comes easily. They know the fire stuff, right? They know the technical stuff. And we need to think about leadership as a thing that we are constantly trying to improve, because we have so much influence and so much power over other people, usually that we take for granted.
Yes.
We don't understand how influential we are. We don't understand how powerful we are. And we have to remember, we are dealing with other human beings, whether you lead one person or you're leading an entire agency. We are dealing with individual human beings, and we need to treat them as such.
Yeah, no, it is. It is a challenging space to be in. And I think because the decisions that we make, can literally be life or death, or, it's that added layer of pressure. And I know whenever I used to go onto the fire ground, and especially if I was the incident controller, sector leader, whatever, I always had in the front of my mind, it didn't matter if it was only like a 20 square meter fire on the side of the road, or, a 1,000 hectare fire in the national park, whatever. I'd always have in the front of my mind, I want to get everyone home safe at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And so that's the framework I used to put in my head. And it sort of leads me on to the next question, that do you think there's something in emergency management that we still don't talk about enough? Because I think part of the problem is that everyone that I'm speaking to as part of the podcast, we've all got a lot of in-depth experience through lots of different environments. We still, even though they're different environments, they're countries apart, we still sort of experience the same thing. And I know there's still stuff there that, I don't know, people call it the elephant in the room or whatever, but there's still stuff there that we don't talk about enough. And I know in that leadership space, there is things that we don't talk about enough.
Yeah. And I have, I guess, 4 areas that immediately spring to mind.
Excellent.
One is mental health.
Yes.
We, it's gotten much more okay to talk about firefighter mental health. At least we openly acknowledge that. I don't know if it's the world over, but here in this country, we have a mental health crisis in the fire service. And at least now we talk about it. We openly talk about suicide prevention, where we used to that you just didn't bring it up. So that's progress, but we still have,
Long way to go.
we're not talking about it enough. There's a long way to go. Wellness in general, even beyond mental health, just people's wellness in general. Unhealthy leaders are not good leaders. Unhappy leaders are not good leaders. And then burnout is a related thing. People in our fields are working just insane jobs quite often.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
and people don't even really realize that they are burning out or they are burnt out. Yeah, and then just the final one, and I want to make clear, I love fire people. I love fire agencies. I love natural resource agencies. I don't want to sound hypercritical, but our agencies have a hard time breaking free of classical leadership thinking, where the leader is this person at the top of a pyramid doing everything for and to other people, when in reality, the leaders that are succeeding in a modern day workplace are dispersing their leadership. They're sharing their leadership. They're leading collaboratively. They're acknowledging that they can't be all things to all people, that they're relying on other people to fill gaps. They're using people's skills and talents to the maximum extent. So I think those are four things that in the emergency service world we don't talk: antiquated leadership, burnout, wellness, mental health.
Yeah, it's certainly four areas that are very, very important. I know with the mental health space, it's getting a lot better slowly. Like when we went through the catastrophic fire in 2003 here in Canberra, the ACT, it took 5 years afterwards before I could really honestly reflect back. But the pressure was, we've had this big fire, the community's hurting, the community's damaged, let's fix this. And I'm sort of going, well, it takes time. It takes a long time. And I know when we were going to get help, because I had quite a few leadership roles along with other people, the help just wasn't adequate. It wasn't that they weren't trying. It's just after a lot of reflection over a long period of time, I came up with that it wasn't that I was actually broken and the people around me weren't broken. It's because we'd never been in that space before. We did not know how to deal with what we were experiencing. We had no toolkit. We had no one around us that had been through it. And the professionals, the counselors, all that sort of stuff, they'd never dealt with it before either. So you'd sit there and just talk to them and you tell them what you're going through because you needed support and help. And I look back at that 20 years ago and that's actually what ended up me writing my book, was about talking about our journeys. And this is also part of the reason for doing this podcast, is because it's about the human side of what we do. Mm-hmm. And it's so easy to just fall back into that rank, fall back into that structure and just go, yep, you do this, this and this and this. Great, big save at the end of the day, walk away. But there's so much more to it than that.
Right, now suck it up and go back to work. And you hear I'm well acquainted with people who have been involved in tragedy fires here in the States, and talking to them, very, very similar experiences. Their agencies gave them resources. It was well-meaning. The providers were well-meaning, but it was
they just don't get it.
Ineffective and maybe even damaging.
Yeah.
To the people involved, and we want to fix them quickly. And
you can't.
Not ready, and they're working with people who don't understand what they do, and just
it is very hard. It's so true about highlighting these issues. We're getting better, there's no doubt about it, but I don't think we actually get to the heart of what the issue is. And I think part of the problem with the mental health is everyone is so different to how they manage the situation. And I remember vividly, I don't know if you've heard of the Thredbo landslide, that we had a massive building collapses in one of our alpine villages. Anyway, I had to come in and set up an incident room because the first lot of teams that had gone up there were coming back to Canberra. And so I was there when they came in because they wouldn't let them go off on their own. they kept them together as a team, brought them back together as a team. And I thought it was one of the best things that they could do, because it was like a 3-hour bus trip and they had them all together in the bus. And it was really interesting talking to one of the leaders after that, because I said, how'd it go? I was really interested to, not about individuals, but what his experiences were and what they were able to do for these people, because they were very distraught. It was a major incident. It was, worldwide. And how do you deal with this sort of stuff where we'd never been in that space again before? And I found his reflection really interesting. He said that, those people, Vivian, I thought that would have coped really well, didn't. And those people that I thought wouldn't have coped, did, in terms of him being quite surprised. And it comes back to that individual response to these environments. And I don't know how, but there's a lot of stuff, a lot of work being done. We're absolutely getting better at it, but there's still a long way to go.
Yeah.
Still a long way to go.
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, I think it's wonderful that we are talking openly. There's, to be honest with you, people's agencies need to get serious.
Yes.
It's still too much of an individual. You can go out and find this help. And it's also something that seems to be reserved for when something really bad happens. When we've got people that are working in jobs that are challenging their mental health just because of the day job. And I just, I don't know if it's true the world over, but the agencies that I'm familiar with really, really need to get much more serious about taking care of their employees' mental health, or helping their employees take care of them.
It's a space where, unless you've been through it, it's really hard to articulate. It's really hard for them to understand. And I know at one point there, when we went through the catastrophic fires in 2003, I think I had to do fire reports. I had to be interviewed by private investigators. I had to be, doing reports for government solicitors, and I had my own barrister, and each person wanted their chunk of flesh. And so you're reliving it constantly and all the time. And I remember my boss, who disliked fire, hated us having anything to do with it, had me one day, Vivian, you're spending too much time on fire, and if you keep it up, I'm going to transfer you to another depot. So I ended up doing a lot of my reporting and stuff when I was at home because I didn't want to do it at work. And I think that's where the challenges lie. And if you layer on top of that the vicarious trauma, so people that aren't directly affected by what's happening, it's where that leadership then becomes really challenging to push yourself further to sort of try and scoop up these people that are involved but not directly involved.
Right. I think the thing that really got my attention with that is because those people are often forgotten in the or actively left out. It's like they're just a dispatcher. They weren't there, and the thing that really got my attention on that subject was once talking, you do 000 for emergency reporting?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do 911. And I talked to a 911 dispatcher who said, you pick up the phone, you talk to a woman whose baby is, not
Distressed.
breathing.
Yeah.
You talk them through it. The paramedics arrive and you hang up and you never know what happens.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I think it's very important that when we have a tragedy or some sort of traumatic event happen at work, that we need to remember that there are people who are not direct participants who can be very, very.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did a paper on mental health in, Portugal almost 4 years ago. And I included in that vicarious trauma because many years ago, when I was still active here in Canberra, we used to have a lot of fire scientists that used to come onto our fire ground. And we never worried about them because we knew them personally. We knew that they'd be safe. And we also knew that when they turned up, things were about to get going.
There was something to be interested in.
Yeah, that's right. And so it was always, but it was, I included in my talk about these kinds of people because they're witnessing the same sort of thing from a different perspective and they're doing it for different reasons. And at the end of the day, when you go back to your day-to-day job, all of these people, they're witnessing this trauma as well and at times experiencing themselves. Yeah, it's a challenging space to be in.
Yeah. And like I was saying earlier, you are dealing with individual human beings that are all cut out differently. And we need to lead with humility, compassion, empathy, and that that demands an individualistic, person-centered approach to leadership.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Another question here that I'd really like to have a chat to you about was, how has the emotional load of this work changed over the years, do you think? Because this is a really big question, and I don't
Yeah,
know if there's an easy answer.
I think it's only gotten, I don't know if you want to say worse or more intense, but events are bigger.
They
They're
are.
they're more severe. They're more intense. They are more frequent. They have higher stakes. There's more work, but fewer resources, right? So, if you take wildfire, for example, in the face of climate change, we've got this dramatically changing operational environment, and we're actually taking resources away from the agencies that are expected to do something about it. We work in this social media environment that adds, some insane aspects
It's such a huge dimension. God, I hadn't even thought about
to
that one.
what we to what we do. There's intense politics. We use our natural resource agencies as political footballs. The emotional load on the people working in emergency management has just gotten more and more
Huge.
intense all the
Yeah.
time.
I think one of the things that used to annoy me is sometimes people always want to capture the action, and
Yeah,
they're busy filming on their phones than what they are paying attention. If I ever caught
right,
anyone doing that, I'd hit the side of the truck and said, "Get your focus where it should be. This is
right.
about safety." But having said that, there's some footage that has come out over the years that are a really good learning experience as well. So it's a real
Yeah.
difficult.
I am definitely of two minds on that subject, because on one hand, I've been out on the fire line where I had single engine holding a burnout, and the engine boss was talking to somebody on the phone, and he's like, "I'm on the phone." I'm like, "Yeah, I know," and I,
Oh,
and we had a pretty intense little counseling session once I got him to hang up. But on the other hand, I really appreciate the images and the videos and
yeah, yeah.
that are available to contribute to training. So yeah, I'm definitely of two minds there.
It's so hard. Yeah, it is a very hard thing to, pardon me, because I know some of the footage that I've watched. The hard thing is when we train people and we teach people about leadership, is helping them to understand exactly what it's like when you're in that space. And I guess a lot of this footage helps you do that,
Yeah, yeah,
because it's really hard saying, look, it is really scary, and it can make you feel uncomfortable, but you're with a team and you've got people there that are by your side, and people that know where you are and know what you're doing, and they're going to watch your back, sort of thing. It's really hard trying to articulate that, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
But without that footage, I guess, I mean, some of the footage that we had, I would have loved to have got in 2003.
Yeah.
It's trying to explain that without that vision sometimes can be quite challenging.
I've become a big fan of drone footage. I just see so many great people producing such great videos
Yeah.
with drones.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's one of those things, 40 years next year for me that I've been involved in this industry. Do you know how many photos I've taken, or how much footage? Zilch. I think I've got 2 photos of me on the fire ground for 39 years worth of working. But anyway, I just would like to ask you the question of, what do you wish that leaders understood about culture that they quite often miss? Because culture is such a really big thing, and it really
Yeah.
goes also to the heart of whether we're going to be successful.
Yeah. The first thing that I wish leaders would understand about culture that they often miss is that they have one, right?
Yes.
I am dead serious. I mean,
Yep. Yep. Now
and
that
that
you've said it, I absolutely agree with it.
and that it is not what they want it to be. It's not what they wish it was. It's not even what they say it is. It is what it is, right? And quite often, if leaders recognize that organizational culture is a thing, they describe it as they want it to be. Oh, we're a big family here, or
Yep.
you hear all kinds of different things, right?
And there's someone up the back of the room going, "What?"
Yeah, and what they don't, and what too few leaders understand. I mean, I don't want to generalize too much, but too few leaders understand is that that culture influences every single thing that people in your organization do. And often, most often, it comes out at the worst times,
Yes.
under the times of greatest pressure. That's when you really see whether your organization's got a healthy, positive culture or not. And you need to sit still every once in a while and observe your organization in action.
Yes. Yeah.
Look for the patterns, and that's going to start giving you some clues as to what the culture of your agency is currently. And if you don't like what you see, and you see a need for change in that culture, be ready for hard work, because
Yeah.
it's not a thing that you change with words or something you hung on the wall or a nice speech or a single training session, because you're trying to get people to change ingrained behavior.
And it's really, really hard to bring that culture to the surface as well. Because I know quite often they do surveys through organizations and they'll pick up some of the main threads, or they'll focus on a lot of the positives. They don't actually quite get to the undercurrent.
Yeah. The why.
Yeah.
That, they observe this behavior and they say, this behavior is common in this workplace, but they don't look for the root cause, right? They're not doing root cause analysis and saying, so why is that behavior common in that organization? Because that's what you got to work on.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I do coaching, I quite often use what we call the 5 whys. Why do you want this? And then you ask again, why? Why do what? So their answer, you ask them why to that answer.
Right.
By the time you get down to the 5th why, you're generally getting at the heart of what's actually going on. So it's that questioning, and I think quite often we only get to the 1st or the 2nd why. We never drill down to the 5th.
Right. And too often, for too many leaders, the first why that they stop at is
Why?
he wasn't trained properly, or it's somebody's fault. It's not there's no organizational influence. It's just one person's behavior.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, the part of what we've been talking about the whole conversation, is that leadership, it's not in the blinkers. It's, you got to broaden it right out, and you got to look at the whole picture. Yeah. And it's a tough gig. What advice or lessons would you give to someone that's stepping into leadership today? Because that's a tough one. I don't know if I could actually answer that. It'd take me a while to think about it first.
I knew you were going to want to ask me about it. So I thought about it, and I actually struggled with it, right? Because there's so many things that I would want to tell a leader who is considering a leadership role today.
Because they crack out all those terms like being vulnerable and approachable and all these sorts of things. And that's good, but you've got to have a little bit of experience and a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of self-reflection, I think, before you can get to that point. Yeah.
So I'll back up to a couple of things that I've already touched on. And one of them is, you need to know yourself. You need to start with self-leadership, because, and it took me way, way too long to figure this out myself, but it is almost impossible, I believe, to be successful at influencing other human beings if you don't really understand yourself. You don't know yourself. You don't understand how your values infuse your leadership. You don't understand how your behaviors land on other people. So it starts there. And another piece of advice I would give is that it's really important to remember that we are dealing with other human beings. And I follow an organizational psychologist who's at the Wharton School of Business, University of Pennsylvania, named Adam Grant. And he's on LinkedIn if people want to follow him. And he, a couple of years ago, published a little infographic one day. And fortunately, it's simple, so I can describe it without waving my hands around too much. But if you just draw a big open circle, and you draw an arrow pointing into that circle that says people's lives, and then you put a little tiny like pencil dot down in kind of the right-hand lower part of the circle, point another arrow at that says, this is what you know about them.
True. Yes.
And we need to remember that we are dealing with human beings who have a lot going on. in their heads, in their hearts, in their homes, and we don't really know what's going on for them, and their lives are not about work. So we need, and back to what I said before, I think because of that, we need to make sure that we are leading with humility, empathy, and compassion. And that, again, pretty much requires a person-centered, individualistic approach to leadership.
Yeah, it's so true, Mike, what you're saying. And if I reflect back over the years, the way that I came into leadership was there was no one else around to do it. So I just got chucked in with no resources, no nothing. And I learned on the fly pretty much like most of us did back in the day.
Yeah.
I would like to think that now that we could give them some skills to make sure that they don't burn out, to make sure that they don't end up with lots of mental health issues later on, to make sure that they have the support that they need. They've got someone to turn to have an honest conversation with all of the above, everything that we've discussed. And yeah, I'd hate to think that we wouldn't have future leaders.
Right. I see a lot of young people who have great experience and would make fantastic leaders, very reluctant to step into leadership roles because they don't think they're ready, or they don't think they're good enough, or they're not really sure leadership's for them. And a lot of it has to do with a pursuit of perfection and wanting to be all things to all people and believing that that's what qualifies you to lead.
Yeah.
And well, I think a piece of advice I would give to a young leader these days is embrace your imperfection. There
Yes.
is a great article. It's an older article, classic article in the Harvard Business Review, but it's really a great one, and it's called "In Praise of the Incomplete Leader."
Yeah. Okay.
And
Yep.
uh, we just need to let people know I don't know everything. I can't
No.
I haven't experienced everything. That's why you're here. Right. And so I just taught a leadership course not too long ago, and I found myself telling some people in the class, like, listen, don't shoot for perfection. You're going to grind yourself into the dust trying to be better, as good or better at everything as everybody on your team. That makes no
Yeah.
sense. You're surrounded by smart, capable people. You don't need to be everything, and you're going to
Yeah.
just ruin yourself trying to be.
It's interesting. Quite a few years ago, I really struggled with that perfection,
Mhm.
about not wanting to do something until you're perfect at it. But it wasn't from my perspective. It was from my perspective as a mother.
Yeah.
And it really drove home to me some really harsh and very valuable life lessons, because
And
one of my children is autistic, and helping him to be the person that he wanted to be in the world. And he was driven by perfection.
yeah,
He was too, I don't know, scared, not enough confidence to be able to do it because he had to know he was perfect at it first. And
yeah,
it took me quite a while to realize and work with him. So by the time we got to his early teens, I think I just had this, it wasn't a mantra, but it was like that said, if you get to perfection, what's next?
yeah, right.
There's nothing after that. You know, you stop your learning, you stop your enjoyment because you're perfect at it. There's nowhere to go. There's no path forward after that. So that was the only way that I could actually try and rationalize it
Yeah.
for him. And it actually worked quite well, because why do you want perfection? And it's
I
asking that why.
Yeah, I actually find myself from time to time being concerned about young fire leaders that I encounter because they are trying to be everything.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether they're at the crew level or managing a big part of an agency. They want to be as good or better at everything than everybody they lead, because that's what they think the expectation is. And those
Yeah.
people are cracking under the pressures, the emotional, psychological pressures of their job.
It's a constant learning, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's you never stop learning. I quite often reflect on a couple of experiences that I had on the fireground where I don't think I did my leadership very well. Because you've got that self-knowledge and that self-awareness, you can use it then to make sure that you don't do it again. And that's part
Right.
of that learning.
Right. And I think you touched on two other really important pieces of advice I would give a young leader is, one, you need to take care of yourself. And it's interesting that servant leadership has become, is back in vogue. but the way some people are introducing servant leadership to people is causing them to believe that they need to suffer,
Oh,
or they are not, serving their people well enough. And I just believe adamantly that unhappy leaders, unhealthy leaders are bad leaders.
yeah,
And
I'd agree with that because
yeah,
what have they got to offer? Bad
yeah, right.
experiences, bad
So
emotions.
yeah. So one, you really, really got to take care of yourself, and leaders should not feel bad about taking care of them. And I want people to experience joy and happiness in their work. And if you've gotten to the point where you are deriving no joy or no happiness from your work, you either need to do something different or find a different place to do what you love. There's something wrong.
Yeah, I agree. And that sort of brings me to the next question so beautifully. Is it what keeps you hopeful about the future for this sector?
So you and I were just at the same conference in Hobart, and the young, super smart, amazing people that are coming into this sector
It's
give
such
me
a joy, isn't it?
a great deal of hope. I mean, I met some really, really cool people, heard some really, really interesting talks, and that gives me hope. It's still attracting amazing people.
Yeah, it's that's
And
so true. And the conference was pretty amazing. I met some really fascinating people and some of the topics I'd never even thought about
yeah,
or or given a great deal of thought to. And they're picking it up and they're running with it and they're making it a
yeah,
part of what we do. And yeah, no, I love that fact as well.
yeah,
Yeah. And that's part of the reason why you get involved in this sort of stuff, isn't it? Because there is still so much passion. There's still so much to learn. And it really does stretch your thinking. And you sort of come home after a conference like that. And it takes you like a week to sort of like digest everything.
yep,
And the thing that always frustrates me though is there was so many people that I wanted to have that
yeah,
conversation with. They just didn't get the opportunity. But,
yeah. I bumped into a participant who I had met and had a really great conversation with in Canberra 2 years before. We saw each other once right at the beginning of the conference. We passed each other in the hallway a couple of times. We never got
never
to
got to chat.
really have a in-depth discussion. And yeah, they're especially since that conference has such a great turnout.
Yes.
It's by
Yeah.
far the biggest IAWF conference that we've had. So
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. It
yeah,
was a very good learning opportunity. Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate everything you do. I like have a bit of a signature question at the end. And because the podcast is really about the heart of what we do and it talks about the human side, what's the one thing, and you've probably already touched on it on the last point, was what's the one thing that really keeps you going?
I don't know. As I age, it's important to me to maintain a growth mindset. I intend, at least right now, can't tell you how I'll feel in 10 years or whatever, but I intend to keep getting better at the things I do right up until the point that I'm not getting better at anything. And for me, that's what keeps me going. I want to connect with people. I want to get to know people. I want to learn things. I want to get better at things that I already know how to do. And I just try to stay in that space as much as I can.
Yeah, no, it is really important because I don't know, when you sort of you get over that, I don't know, there's that point in life where you've sort of reached the pinnacle and you sort of slowly start coming down
Yeah.
the other side and it's like, where do I focus now? Where can I add the best and still be a part of it? And that's part of the reason why I'm doing the podcast because I have met so many brilliant people throughout my career, including yourself. And we have so much knowledge and wisdom, experiences that we've got to share it.
Yeah. I tried to get out of fire at one time. And yeah, I just realized, after a couple of years of trying to work in a different space with nonprofit organizations, and I enjoyed it a lot. But all of a sudden, I realized, I
It's in
relate
your
to
DNA.
I relate to fire people.
Oh, I know. And do you know what? It's for me, it's a part of that teamwork and it's that shared experience that I really value with people, and especially being a female in the industry, if I go back 40 years, I could count the amount of women on one hand. But it's been that journey that I've shared with all of those people throughout the last 40 years. And the same thing, a couple of times I decided, no, I'm still part of the volunteer brigade. I just find it's just in your DNA. And for
Yep.
a career that I never ever thought I'd ever be in, when I first started as a ranger back in, when was it, 1987, long time ago. I would never ever have thought I would have gone through and experienced what I had.
Yeah. What I call accidental fire people are some of the best fire people.
I definitely call myself an accidental fire person because I got chucked into a job that I didn't want to do and I had no choice but to perform. And, back in the day, there was no training. We never had any training. You just learnt from the person next to you. And I was just really fortunate that I worked with quite a few bush people, people that knew the bush really well because that was their job. They worked in that environment every day and they were so gracious and so beautiful and embracing of this little whippersnapper back then. But no, it is. I do think at times it is in your blood.
Yeah. No, that was the conclusion I came to. I had just come off. I left my job and started my consulting firm, and we had just come off a really, really severe fire year where I spent a ton of time away from home. Wasn't at home during some key events that I wish I had been home for, and was just thought I got to get out of this. But it didn't last. I got over it, and I just realized, I miss fire people.
The experience that you share when you're put in a situation where you're under stress and you're performing at a very high level, there's a connection there that you share with these people, and that's pretty hard to give up.
Yeah, and we've and that's one of the things is the emerging part of the study of leadership that's really interesting is the neuroscience of leadership. And we are so unaware of how we are connecting with other human beings in ways that we have no idea what's going on. And I just, I think that connection is very, very real.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing that I've been recognizing,
I think that's one of the things most of the fire people I know are pragmatists, right? They don't have time for a lot of the petty crap that divides people.
I call it fluff.
You got work to do. We need to get it done. You know how to do that? Great. I don't care, what gender you are. I don't care what color you are. Just, if you can do that, go do it.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that because I used to always say, so I used to work as a paid firefighter with the parks, but I also used to do a lot in the volunteer space. And sometimes there's a little bit of friction there. And I always had the opinion as a leader that the fire doesn't discriminate whether you're paid or not, and neither do I.
That's absolutely right.
And I think that's, I think those sorts of things are really important.
Yeah, I do too.
Well, thank you, Mike. I really appreciate this conversation.
Thanks for the invitation.
Me quite a lot, and I've really valued your insights into what you've brought to this conversation. And I can't thank you enough for agreeing to be a part of it. And I know we're both not in the best of health at the moment with your sneezing and my coughing, but I think we've done pretty well. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. It was really interesting, and
No, it was my absolute pleasure.